My name is Justin Conrad. I'm the director of the Center for International Trade and Security, which is part of the School of Public and International Affairs here at UGA. And we are very excited to have you here today. We thank you for coming and giving us a little bit of your time this morning to talk with you about some of the things that we do. And this is a good time to be here. It's still relatively quiet. Of course, in a couple weeks here, it's going to get a lot louder, as you know. So glad you're here in early August. Go Dogs. I don't want to hold up the program, but I do want to briefly give you some context about what you're going to hear this morning. This is part of an ongoing collaboration between the College of Engineering and the School of Public and International Affairs. And I do want to thank Don Leo. He's here with us this morning. He's the Dean of the College of Engineering, as well as Matt Howard, who's the Dean of SPIA. He was unable to be here today. But both of them have been tremendously supportive of our efforts, and the collaboration would not happen without their support. So thank you, Don. And this collaboration has already reaped incredible benefits for our students. Thanks in no small part to Dr. Josh Massey, who's here with us. He's the director of our Master of International Policy program. And he made sure that everything that our students are learning in the classroom, that there's actually value to it out in the real world. So thank you, Josh. This collaboration is really key to everything that we do at the Center for International Trade and Security. I think we have some annual reports lying around somewhere. Hopefully on the way out, you can grab one of those. I hope you'll take a look at all of the activities that we do, all the great things that our faculty and staff and students are involved in the related areas of nuclear security and human security. But we spend a lot of time thinking about what you're going to hear about today, which is our energy policies and how those policies impact the security and the well-being of folks in our state and our country. Because aside from our academic mission, one thing that we all agree on is that our main goal is to contribute to the mission of the land-grant university, the University of Georgia, which is to improve the lives of individuals and families in our state. So among all those other things that we do, we are constantly trying to understand how our state energy policies, our national energy policies, impact the well-being of our folks. Because in my opinion, the train has left the station already. One way or another, we are headed towards a lower carbon energy future. And what we want to understand is how we do that sensibly in a way that doesn't sacrifice our national security, doesn't sacrifice the well-being of our people. And we joked this week when we were thinking about what we were going to present this week for you. One thing we are very good at the Center for International Trade and Security, unintentionally, is our timing. So last year, we hosted a major energy security conference right here at the Georgia Center. We had scholars and industry folks from all over the U.S. and Europe, and somehow we managed to schedule it just a few weeks after Russia invaded Ukraine. So you can imagine what those discussions
that might not be played right.
Yeah, like people were asking us if we knew something that nobody else knew.
What kind of you part of
Maybe. And lo and behold, we did it again this week, right? So we arranged to do this update for you on Friday morning, and on Monday morning, I don't know if you've seen the news, but the first commercial nuclear reactor in 30 plus years started business just down the road from here. So
Friday Us was responsible for all of that.
Yeah, he actually flipped the switch, from what I understand. So all that is to say that in this room, we actually feel like we are preaching to the choir quite a bit because Georgia is already way out in front of the rest of the country in meeting these economic and climate and energy challenges of the coming decades. And UGA as well, with what we're doing here at the center, with the university's many initiatives in electric mobility. And so that's why we believe and we advocate that the state of Georgia really should be the model for national energy policies going forward. And I guess if your other options are California and Texas, it's not much of a choice. So I wrote down two things I needed to do. One, thank you for coming. And 2, I wrote, get out of Dr. David Gaddy's way. So I mentioned Dean Leto and Dean Alla. Their support has been critical, but the honest truth is none of it happens without the incredible leadership of Dr. Gaddy. For those of you who don't know him, he is an associate professor in the College of Engineering. He's also a senior fellow at the Center for International Trade and Security, and he is the bright, burning sun in our energy security galaxy. So please welcome Dr. Gaddy.
So I'm going to burn through this pretty quick, and I have reduced it a good bit. Should be able to get through it just fine. Devin, keep me on the line of sight. I was trying to send over here to the side. Several graphs, got a lot of numbers we're going to go through. What we're trying to do here today is put Georgia in context, that is in over context with the U.S. and a little bit in context with the world. Those of you that are in the energy space and doing work in the energy space, and it's kind of hard to miss it. Just about every front burner, top of the folders, news item these days is about energy or climate issues. And it's easy to get lost in that. And so what we are trying to do is put that in the context of the security first. Our policy here for things that we do at the University of Georgia with our group is it is an energy security centric approach to energy under carbon constraints. That is, to Justin's point, we're not going to promote ideas or push ideas that are going to sacrifice or jeopardize our national security, our energy security, or our economics. So as I go through these slides, the things that I want you to pay attention to generally are resource diversity, electricity rates in markets, and the way that we're proposing to do that as far as where Georgia stands, we're going to compare Georgia to other states, but in the context of the U.S. So we're going to talk about, relative to the U.S., we've got 8 top GDP states. Georgia's number 8. We're going to look at future demands. That's a particularly important slide. Vote 3 is online. Vote 4 come up maybe end of this year or first of next year. We may be long on energy today. That ain't going to hold. And so we've got to be thinking about things down the road. And then we're going to close out with Georgia's unique position. So trends and comparisons. So this is, I'm going to start up with the U.S. and most of this you're going to be familiar with. This is total energy consumption in the U.S. That's transportation, electricity, and heat. We'll break the electricity out in just a second. We're sitting on about 78% fossil fuels and 13% renewables. You can see which renewable here actually when we get to the power generation slide. You can see we're moving away from coal. Everybody knows that. And we're tacking into natural gas. With the push for more and more electrification, in fact, that is a lot of top-down policy directives is to just electrify our economy. We got a few concerns about that. But as we do that, then we look at our U.S. electricity generation and look at this in terms of diversity. And if we're moving away from coal, moving into natural gas, and if we get into the other states, that is a major concern. We're shifting away from a traditional on-site storable resource, which is coal, to a flow resource, which is gas. If the pipes ain't flowing, you don't have electricity. So historically in the U.S., we have always built on diversity. When we found new energy resources, we didn't look at there and say, what are we going to throw out? We kept it, built technologies around it, built our industrial base broader, deeper, and that industrial base is critical. Keep that in mind when we compare the U.S. industrial base around energy and energy technologies with other countries. As our industrial base moves away from certain resources, theirs are moving towards more resources, not fewer. This is a busy slide. Josh and I talked about this till the cows near about came home. Everything up here, I will pass along to you. You can have it. What this is showing is resource mix around the country. Dustin, you can't read this, can you? Good. So let me tell you what it says. You can just about start down here in the west, south, central and move counterclockwise. And you'll move from a lot of fossil fuels down in this area, a lot of nuclear, and as you move up into the northeast, you're starting to get away from fossil fuels. Also notice the electricity rates for residential. The national average is 15 cents, about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. Look at these rates as you move around. Get up into the upper northeast, 24.81 cents. I've got some graphs in just a little bit. What this is showing us, and we'll break some of this out in a minute, resource by resource, that reflects two things for the most part. It reflects resource availability, that is, do you have certain resources, primarily renewables, coal, natural gas, nuclear, you can ship those around. But the renewables are geographically anchored. The other thing that reflects is policy. Those are politics you see up there on that screen. Let's look at the solar and wind. They get a lot of attention. This is the main regions. Those regions that I've got pointed out here are above the national average for solar and wind. Question is, where are they coming from? Utility scale solar, this is not residential, it's all utility scale solar. About 76%, 77% of all solar in the U.S. comes from 8 states. California has got about 26, 27% there. This gets a lot of attention, so the state of Georgia gets all of it because that is our renewable resource. But it's only coming from 8 states. You can see the resource in the little insert map over there where it's orange in the southwest, where a lot of it is. That's a resource availability. Also, nobody lives there because it's so dang hot. If you look in that east coast over where we are, resources a little bit less. Those are policy decisions. And what we're going to talk about in here is Georgia has done this in a very calculated way. We have not taken the California approach. We've taken the Georgia approach. So these are policy decisions on the East Coast. On the West over in here, a lot of it's just resource availability. Yes, sir. Chuck. Yes, sir.
You said solar is our is our renewable resource.
In Georgia.
Right. But just draw the distinction between renewable resource and carbon-free resource. Because nuclear,
It's carbon free.
it's carbon-free, but a lot of people would say it's renewable too because of the fuel, the lifetime of the fuel.
So
that's the distinction.
So Chuck, I'm gonna make the distinction between renewable, being traditional renewables,
Right.
and regenerative, which nuclear is. That is, we can breed more and more uranium. We can breed plutonium. We can breed uranium-233 from thorium. So I hate to put it in the renewable category because to me, a lot of people hear renewable, and the first thing is intermittent. Nuclear is not that.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough?
Yeah, no, that's what I was waiting for.
Yep.
The distinction.
Did you write that down?
Got it, man. Like steel trap right
Down
here.
here.
Rusting every day.
The wind resource is similar. Midwest part of the country, up, down, vertically through there, 75% is coming through 10 states. Also back here on solar, notice Georgia's in there. I think we're at what's number 6. But that wind resource, it's in the Midwest. Again, the demand centers for more power generation are east and west of that. Over on the East Coast, a lot of transmission lines are going to be needed. We're going to connect that resource to the demand centers. This one is a serious issue right now in the country. We spent a lot of time talking about nuclear power in the U.S. and, of course, Georgia right now being where it is. We'll talk about it a little bit more later. I want you to pay attention to these particular regions where nuclear is the highest. It ranges from a dependency down here of about 24% up to, 25, 31% in the middle Atlantic. We're starting to look at, in fact, those red ones up there. Now we're starting to look at, when I mentioned policy issues, a lot of that has to do with the kind of market structure these states and these regions have. So here's what we've been dealing with over the past, since 2013. We have retired 13 nuclear reactors in the U.S. For various reasons. Some were maintenance, some it was just not going to be economic. A lot of times they just can't compete with very inexpensive yet voluntarily priced natural gas. They can't compete, and this is at the margins, can't compete with subsidized renewables. Of all these reactors, 13 retired. There were 22 other ones that we're going to be retired for various reasons, renewable portfolios, standards, and other things, until the engineers walked in the room and said, you know what, if you retire those plants, get ready. Of those reactors there, only 5 of them, all the other ones are in deregulated markets. And Commissioner Pridemore is here and she can testify to the strength of having a regulated, vertically integrated market where you can plan out. These markets here, they're just working at the margins. It's a 2 or 3 year vision. Here in Georgia, it's 20 years, every 3 years. That is a strength for the state. Everybody in this room knows that, Rob, and guessed. If we look at residential rates, regulated versus deregulated, we're just going to compare the two. Here are the regulated rates. The black dotted line, dash line there is the U.S. average. Georgia's in red, red, black. We Georgia. If we were Georgia Tech, we'd have red and black. Everything's red and black. You see where Georgia is. Vermont's up there because Vermont really does not know what it wants to be when it grows up. But 2 things to notice. Most of the regulated market trends are below the national average, and they're tight. They're very tight. Not a lot of fluctuation. You go to the deregulated markets. Now, the scale's the same, 25 down to 5. National average, most of them are above it. Very scattered. Just a different approach in those markets to electricity. Oddly, these markets were set up 30 years ago to chase lowest cost. I almost laughed because it just hadn't found them yet. Apparently they're hiding behind the sofa because this is simply not panning out. Ronnie Just could probably stand up here and don't, and probably sit here and preach for months on something like this. We are not here, we're here. Now just some detail on our energy. This is our total energy, transportation, electricity, heat. We're going to focus more on the power generation side of things, but you know, we're right now looking at what, 563, we're 70% fossil fuels for the most part, total. Trending away, but if we get to the power sector again, our average rate in Georgia, 14.02 cents. In the U.S., we're below that, 15.12. We're sitting right now 48% gas, 28% nuclear. That's fixing to go up. Which again, this is an important trend. Coal's down, gas is up. Carbon-wise, everybody's going to be happy. But if you are a utility person, I ain't going to speak for them, but I speak for myself. The loss of that base load storable resource, you got to do something about that. Now in Georgia, we're responding. We're going to swap it out. It's going to be zero carbon. We turn the thing on Monday. Unit 4's coming on. The only state, as we look at these other states trending away from coal and towards gas, we're the only one that's doing that. Good job. Both of them. Here's why it matters. So I'm going to give you 2 slides here that are kind of very important with resource diversity and integrated resource planning. This is a standard 12 to 12, midnight to midnight demand curve. We've got to take in mind that we have to have capacity minimum here that is reliable 24/7. We can't have a lot of fluctuation there in that base load demand part. We've got that intermediate demand, and then we got peak demand up there. We're going to have to fill it in with one of those 7, 2 of those 7, 3, whatever. That's all we got. We got some biomass. There's some geothermal out west. But for Georgia, it's everything up there except wind. And on top of that, not only is the technology and the resource got to be available, it's going to have to follow that demand curve just in time. Now, how do you backfill that, fill that graph in? Essentially, you're looking at base load of coal and nuclear. We're tending to use more and more, this is natural gas combined cycle, as a base load resource. But once you get above that, you've got renewables. So Chuck, this gets to your point, we got renewables that are going to come in, and we'll use them when they're available. But something's got to adjust, and you know what it's going to be. It's going to be natural gas, and up there it's going to be those gas turbines that are peaker plants. It's going to be quick response. So those things have to be flexible and callable. I had it back here on that last graph. Callability for these resources and technologies is critical. It's how they keep the lights on when you get up to that peak demand part. That diversity is not just the resource, it's the technology too. So right here in the middle of the day, when they talk about more and more solar, we can pack that more and more solar, but all it's going to do is move vertical. So it'll move horizontal. More and more wind, it's going to move out here on the shoulders, but not do a lot in the middle. That diversity is the lifesaver for a state's power site. This is where we are in Georgia capacity-wise. A lot of natural gas combustion turbines, combined cycle, coal, nuclear, solar, you see it all the way down the line. We'd vote with 3 or 4 come online there. But again, long on energy, but we've got demands and generation capacity. Commissioner, do y'all think about these things over there in Atlanta? I don't know the name of the building, but y'all sit around talking about what 20 years down the road?
Dr. Gaddy, I think about it all the time. I can't attest to the others.
That's because you're not on Twitter with your ready. Our future demands and generation capacity are going to come from this or maybe some batteries down here. That's pretty much it. We're not going to build any more hydro plants. So these are going to be tough decisions, and we look at where the demand is coming from. Right now, for electricity, residential is consuming about 43% of it, commercial, industrial. And as I travel around the country, and particularly in the state of Georgia, I hear utility executives tell me that they know that this is a curve that's going to increase. We're getting more and more industry queries. And what they want to know is, can you keep the lights on? Can you keep the lights on? They love voting. Chuck?
Any press in the room?
And we need that.
Recognize?
I have no idea.
I just wondered, based on what you said there, he's great credit to the governor, Pat Wilson, and economic development, but I think Rivian, the Hyundai plant, knew where their base power was going to come from, and
Of course they need to come there. And I could name 15 states that I've spoken at the last 3 years. When you get behind the doors, they say, man, we wish we was Georgia. Not just because of Vogel, but because we're hanging on to resources without trying to jump off a cliff too fast. That is, we're just transitioning, but no, we're still going to hang on. I was the first person that when they talked about shutting down those plants at Shearer, that said, bad decision. Of course, none of them, I'm just a nerd and sits over here with a computer. But I know full well if we could use that coal capacity. Right?
David, one of the things that scares me, and I'm hoping our folks down at the legislature are working on the right team, but the biggest opportunity that I see that we have all these electric vehicles is go to real-time pricing for the retailers, for these guys that are out here trying to racetracks, quick trips, whatever, on charge of those vehicles. Because if we don't, and we let those people charge in the middle of a peak, they're all charging their car at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we don't have enough hours to meet down. We can't get that egg off your face for having a brown house blackout.
And Frank, that ain't going to, we're not, I'm speaking for the commission, but we're not going to let that happen. We can't let that. To your point's well taken. That's why Georgia's doing this as an economic development thing instead of trying to reduce carbon overnight, trying to zero out carbon by 2030 or whatever it may be. This is going to take a lot of planning for the EMCs, the Oglethorpes, and the Georgia Powers, the MEAGs. Because swapping up these chargers, and imagine if everybody does it at home. You know what's going to happen. Everybody comes on at 5 o'clock. We're still in that peak, and suddenly that peak, that just can't happen. I mean, the thing is, we can't allow that.
Well, and I think the only way you get the public's attention is variable pricing that changes right on the load curve.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You have a tariff rate for that now for an EV.
Yep. That's, yeah. That's, yeah.
To your point, Senator, we do have a tariff rate for charging to adjust for the curve. To Dr. Daddy's point, one of our premier challenges at the moment, though, is planning for that industrial peak that he's talking about. Because So keep in mind, if you're adding EV charging or residential electric use, that's more of a gradual slope up. When you're adding industrial load, that's a stiff spike.
How many megawatts at a time? We're talking 100, 150, 200 megawatts, just like that long.
And how we can manage the generation and the transmission to be able to meet that. That's because if we can meet that, then we can pick up the gradual increase that we're going to have in EV charging, as well as with pricing.
Most of those large industries can't own it all. They're not, they can't shed that demand. But on the electric charging, if you put the incentives out there for the public,
You can manage that load.
yeah, you can do that, but you've got to be able to get to where it's real time based on the demand for the system for whatever utility, whether it's just
And that is a shift. That is a shift in a consumer's opinion. If everybody's going to have an EV suddenly, they're going to have to start thinking about when they do it. That's a shift. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Terry.
So, just curiosity, and everybody says, ask a question, the answer to, but I'll answer this. What would be the equivalent when you plug an EV car in, say in 100-watt light bulbs or a 1500-watt space heater? When you plug that car in, what is the demand at the point that it starts charging? What would it be equivalent?
I don't know. Anybody running
home chargers about 12,000 watts.
So it's 12 kW. 12 kW.
When you look at the fast chargers that are out there on the market right now, we've got them up to 500 kW. So you're immediately jumping the gun, but they're going to develop 1,000 kW chargers. So when you look at a quick trip or racetrack that's got 25 pumps on it, that's a substation.
Yeah.
You put 50 of those out there, that's the same amount of power that you put out at Plant Vogel in this last generating unit. That's 1,250 megawatts.
And 12 kW tier is a water heater.
Yeah.
Electric water.
Yeah.
But no, the electric water heater's 4.5 kW.
If them both running, they both run.
If you got all the units running on it, which doesn't happen in an electric water heater, but
I got two of them, dude. I got two. That's my point.
yeah, okay, okay. But that's where, for me, the problem then becomes, how do you manage that locally? Because if you, me, and David are on the same transformer, we got a 25 kVA transformer, we turn all 3 chargers on at one time, the transformer melts down.
We ain't gonna let that happen. Shelley, go let that happen. All right, that kind of gets to this point here. This transportation line down here that's using no electricity, this is gonna put upward pressure on the utilities. And the question is gonna come down to, really, it's gonna come from one of these 4 right there. We build another coal plant, I'll eat my best hunting dog without cooking. Y'all are gonna have a tough road to hoe politically if we start talking about natural gas poles. I'd be all for building a 500 megawatt natural gas plant in 4 different places. But that is going to be a tough public sale with the carbon constraints there. Small modular reactors.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, Chuck wants to talk about nuclear reactors. Hey, get up here, Chuck. Just start talking.
No.
But this is going to be the future. You got to come down the cost curve. We're not there, and there's not a single one deployed in the U.S. But everybody's talking about it. That is a bigger deal in this presentation than I'm giving it credit. That is huge as far as future means. Long on energy, near term, we're going to be short on energy 10 years out. And when you start planning for that? Yesterday, not 10 years. So let's look at Georgia relative to our competitors. These 8 GDPs represent about 50 country. Here's Florida. I spent a long time down there, and that curve, they are 75% nuclear and increasing, and they're scared. That's a worrisome thing. That's a long pipe that goes from Louisiana. It's curving around the panhandle.
You said nuclear, but you meant
Natural gas. Run it back, Randy. Natural gas, thank you. Natural gas. That is nuclear, might be happy with. Natural gas. That flow resource, very concerning. They're shutting down coal, flat on nuclear. When you look at New York, I want you to notice what they've done over the past 2 to 3 years. They shut down 2 reactors, and you see exactly what the response was. They backfilled it with gas, and they've got carbon standards. This is chasing your tail and not knowing how to catch it. Their rates, again, are 22 cents. With Georgia, you keep in mind, diverse, Building nuclear, rates below the national average, what's not to like? Illinois, again, back here too, New York is deregulated, Florida's regulated. Illinois deregulated, got the most nuclear capacity in the country. Flat on nuclear, shutting down coal, so they are really swapping out baseload coal, and they're backfilling that using natural gas increasingly as a baseload resource. This is Pennsylvania. They shut down 3 Mile Island. Again, you see the immediate response. You shut down a nuclear plant, you're going to backfill it with natural gas. Pretty good rates in Pennsylvania, though. But again, their resource diversity is shifting from baseload storables to a flow resource to gas. Ohio, that's one of the states I've been in a few times, and they kind of have buyer's remorse on the deregulation plan. They wish they hadn't done it, a lot of them. But again, just simply swapping out coal for gas. Great for CO2, but there's a reliability risk when you do this. Texas, always in the news, Justin mentioned them. Look what Texas is doing. They're moving away from coal and natural gas, at least in the near term, and they're backfilling with renewables, Chuck, straight up renewables. Great rates. Not there a couple of times. They've had a few. Now, this is a standard regulated market. That market is set up to primarily do one thing: chase lowest marginal price. And they're getting them for now, but they have put at risk reliability, and the consequences have bit them. Then you look at a deregulated market that is chasing carbon reduction, and you get California. High rates, low reliability, 30% of their electricity comes from out of state, and they have 38% of the EVs in the country, and they're wanting more. There's a lot to talk about here in a separate 1-hour presentation, but this is everything Georgia ain't, right there on that screen. Residential rates for all those you see, we're below the average and below right there. Georgia's just doing a good job right now, but we can't rest on that. So I'm gonna fire through some CO2 emissions. This is our all 4 sectors. This is important to me to look at where we are 2021. Though we'll have the 2022 data just yet. But look at the trend line for electric power. It's mostly from coal and gas, but our emissions are down. In fact, we're back at 77 levels. And if we look at the power sector, 33% of Georgia's CO2, 0.8% of U.S. CO2, 0.1% of global. That's not a whole lot, and it's decreased. And we've kept the lights on, and we've kept rates. Transportation sector, you see it. One of the more strict metrics here is CO2 per economic development. This is all 8 of those states. Again, black is the U.S. average, red is Georgia. We're good. CO2 per dollar GDP, we're in the pack, we're below the average. We're not as low as New York and California. What is their trend? It's flat. You know why? There's only so much carbon you can take out of your energy base without not having any carbon. Georgia's in good shape. And again, our rates up here better than average. So last 2 slides at global forecast. This is what the world is doing. And again, a lot of pressure is on the U.S. to do more, do more, do more. This is what the world is. It's at 82% carbon. If we look at the trend of the electricity sector, coal is not decreasing, and it ain't going to anytime soon. Gas will continue to increase. World is about 61% dependent on fossil fuels for electricity. Wind is coming in pretty strong. Nuclear is increasing everywhere except, it's increasing in countries like China and some of the developing economies. But again, if you look at total U.S. CO2 emissions for total energy and electric power sector, we're back at the time when Chuck Martin was playing football at Georgia, where our CO2 emissions are old.
We had leather helmets.
That explains a lot, Chuck. But look at where we are. Chuck knows I'm kidding. He's going to pull that thing out.
You well to be a straight man.
He's going to hit me in the head with that ring. U.S. CO2 emissions, just put them in context with the power sector. U.S. CO2 emissions about 30% of U.S. total and about 4% of the global total. From
could you hit on a couple of things for me? One of them, if you look at the gas and diesel that we burn here for driving vehicles,
Yeah.
and you said, okay, if I put that into electric power, where's that number equate to? And then when we talk about global warming, emission, CO2, that kind of stuff, I was talking to Cutie Baby last night, said about these airplanes that fly around, and I looked at, okay, how much problems do we have in burning fuel with Metro Atlanta and the amount of jet fuel that we use flying everybody all over the place compared to what we do in driving?
We're not going to do it with jet fuel. We're going to keep using that. As far as shifting over and if we replace the transportation sector overnight, I don't know how many gigawatts of electricity we're going to need. But the thing is, what are we going to power it?
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I want to know.
That's it. Well, I'll check my bill folder, but I ain't got the answer right there. That's a bunch.
Okay.
And this is my last number slide here. If you look at 2000 to 2022, the global carbon emissions, this is broken down into regions. This is not a complaint. These countries are doing what they're doing because it develops their economy. It's energy security. They're not to blame for that. But if you look at where the CO2 emissions are coming from, predominantly it's China, which has recently developed its economy. India's next. The rest of the Asia Pacific. This is where 55% of the people in the world live. And the U.S. and Europe are the only ones that have been a negative CO2. But again, the pressure is to do more. My closing slide. Yes, sir, Dr. Gaddy.
Just get it on the table. Those with all the answers will throw modular nuclear in our face. Instead of answer solution, you've answered that question. Where are we on hydrogen?
I think we're always 5 years out. If the small modulars can reach economic scale, that's our hydrogen answer, I think. Because I don't think we're going to be able to sustain that politically from natural gas. The renewables can do some of it, but the heat that's coming out of there and what we can hydrolyze is small compared to what we can get for off-take heat from a different. Fair enough? We're the only state in the country that is offsetting reduction in coal with nuclear, natural gas, and renewables. We're reducing carbon. Reliability is maintained, and we're developing an EV manufacturing hub for the right reason. This is a lot to be proud of, but this is not an emergent issue. This was state leadership. It was the PSC. It was utilities. It was Pat Wilson's group thinking far ahead. This does not just happen. The market's not going to kick that by itself. It takes good policy, strong leadership. Terry?
Can you back up one more slide? Back up one more, I think. Well,
Is it back to the U.S.?
demand in Georgia, electrical demand in Georgia. I
Oh.
thought I saw a slide that. What? My question
Is it this one?
I don't remember now. The question is, though, on overall consumption in the state of Georgia, did we see a drop in demand during the pandemic as offices were closed, people were staying at home, you're not having to heat or cool a home and heat or cool an office to the extent that you would if people were in both places?
Yeah, right here.
There you go.
Right here. Well, that's not overall, but if I had the overall curve, the answer is yes, and it also did for the country.
You have any idea what the percentage or what the
I think what we were looking at here, somewhere just in the single digit percentage drop off. I don't think it was too
But it
much.
would be, but I'm just thinking about what your requirements would continue to be for base load
So
insurances. And
So that minimum, Terry, I don't think that it impacted that, well, wherever I was, somewhere on there. Everybody reckon I moved here. I don't think it changed this baseline too much. So that minimum capacity we're gonna need no matter what.
But if, I guess my point that I'm getting to, if there was a way to encourage more work from home, we pick up less need on transportation, infrastructure, and maintenance. you also, if you're taking office space or not building as much office space, what office space is there is what office space is there. But if you're not having to condition that space necessarily to the level that you're having to, if you're gonna have people around there, you got equipment in it, then you bend that demand curve maybe a little bit more.
So here's what I'm gonna guess, and I don't know the answer. You're going from a centralized heating and cooling, and you're gonna spread it out. I
But-
think you're gonna lose some economy of scale there.
Well, but at the same time, everybody's still leaving the air conditioning on at home while they're going to the office. And
I turned mine up to 78. I had to wait till my wife.
Not
leave,
everybody.
you know.
The England household does it, because I shouldn't be told to walk back in, but
Yeah, agreed. Good, it's a good question. I don't have the direct answer, but that would be my, if everybody behaved, answer to the
Right.
question.
I got you.
When you decentralize something, you're gonna lose.
well, yeah, understood. But
Trish, oh, Trish, I'm sorry.
So we evaluated energy usage to the 2022 IRP. And what we saw, because part of our sample year had and energy usage for 2020 and for 21. And for the electricity sector, it was flat. Because if you think about it, we all went home, we all ran our ACs, our TVs. So during the day when we would go to an office, that would all be shut off. You still had minimal electricity use in office space for basic heating and cooling to keep the place from getting moldy and rotten, but we're using more at home. Where we saw a dive in energy across the board was in transportation. So from an electricity standpoint, our analysis was that working from home keeps it flat compared to where it is now. Now that doesn't account for, let's say we go back to another commercial real estate boom and we start building more commercial real estate again. We don't know how this will come out the next time, but this last time it was flat.
I guess looking forward though, if there was less need for that commercial space, you'd have less need to keep it conditioned, those kind of things.
Here's the reality though. You have some cost in that. People look for ROI. I was already talking about refitting that as unused office space in residential. So it's going to get, I think it's going to get used one way or the other. What about just efficiencies? I mean, we replaced an air conditioner in a house, and the cost literally of paying for that air conditioner. Train had the special, 6 years.
When did you
I'm sorry, no, this was central air. But Train had this thing with $7,200, and then oddly enough, 6 years, no interest. It really worked like that. So $500 a month, the energy bill, the electric bill, and it was all electric, actually went down on an average $140 a month. The unit in it. Yeah, I mean that's how efficient a new unit is, a heat pump unit is, from one that was 18 years old, that it actually cut usage. So, I mean,
So
those things are retro.
one of the things that comes up about this when I'm in conversations around the country, particularly when I get up in the Dakotas, and they're talking about shifting over to an all-electric everything, I always ask the question, y'all are actually going to shift over and try to heat your house with a heat pump? And they swear up and down that they got heat pumps that pull heat out of a 0 degree air, and I hadn't seen it. Has anybody from utility seen heat pumps that can keep a house warm at -10? Because it's cold in the Dakotas. It is. So a lot of the efficiency we can get out of that down here, Chuck, but it kind of stops.
Well, no, I was just talking about the fact we're replacing one heat
No,
pump.
I got it.
Newer
Yeah.
heat pump.
And I think everybody's knows they got deals. They want to find them to come cut down on that heat part. But and this. So my closing slide's gone. Take home points. Georgia's doing a good job, just like the book of Ecclesiastes. Everything for everything, there's a season. We are not going to be in this position for long. And it's going to take a lot of policy lifters to convince the public, the fellow policymakers, we're going to need something out there. And it's probably going to be SMRs and natural gas, and that is a public relations issue. If y'all need anything, Justin, Josh, and I are at your disposal. We will jump. You say jump, we'll say how about it. As long as we can help you, we want you to come to us and call on us. If anybody's got, yep, yes, sir.
Do you track annual peaks?
Annual peaks, no, sir, but I can. But I have not done that so far. I've actually tracked it mostly.
The way
for
Georgia's
states
dropped,
right-
I was just wondering if the peak has gone.
up. Anybody peaks in Georgia? Increase, they shifted though more towards the winter. I think we've got a winter peak.
Peaks higher.
Two peaks,
Depends on where it
summer and a winter.
But which one's the peakiest?
Summer.
Summer's still the peak.
The reason, the necessity for the winter peak is because we put renewables in the system, and we'll still warn for you early in the morning. So I've gotten people to have base load now for that, so I can get home.
So it has increased though over the past, what, 5 years, 6 years, 17 years?
It's increased, peaks have increased over the last, we did a 19 IRP and a 22 IRP. That would be about 40 years of history, and it's been consistently. It's last 40.
Rurals, they set a new peak at Christmas this year. Said because there's less natural gas, said a lot more heat pumps. The MEAGs and the Georgia Power said they're more clustered with the natural gas. They're still summer peak.
Yeah.
But the EMCs said that they went this past Christmas. And we're lucky in Georgia that all businesses were shut down. Otherwise, we would have had some brownouts. A lot more than just TVA in Northwest Georgia.
It was a tough Christmas. Well, just real quickly, maybe you got things coming. So you've talked about Georgia looks 20 years over the life. I don't mean to trade you with this, but I've heard you speak to this before. What if we took our eye off of the life in an old bag with some short term, let's fix some stuff in near term? Could it ever get back to
No.
where we are?
Well, it would take longer to get back to it than it would have it done it to begin with. This is just not one of those buying oranges and shoes. These are just not interchangeable resources. Once you start shutting down those, in fact, if you look at the Colts plant, capacity factor, it's hanging steady, but it's because they're idling the plant. Once you start shutting those down, taking up unload, you're not going to restore hard infrastructure. It's not going. We got to get people on the bus. Okay. Tell Kirby I said hey, and I'm sorry. Oh yeah. Don, you know it, man. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate you.